Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining promptly at noon. And it's my pleasure to go ahead and get started as people continue to trickle in. Welcome to the 2024 Great Decision Speaker Series, an initiative of the Foreign Policy Association, sponsored locally by the World Affairs Council of St. Louis and Munsell Global, the International Affairs Office at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. Munsell Global has been a partner and sponsor of the speaker series for many years, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here today. The World Affairs Council is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization with local chapters across the United States. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. Connects the citizens of the St. Louis region to the world. It was founded in 1948 with a mission to offer programs that promote understanding, engagement, relationships, and leadership in world affairs. They rely on the generous donations of the community and annual memberships to continue to provide those programs. They are currently celebrating their 75th anniversary, so celebrate with them by becoming a member today. My name is Stephen Bagwell. I'm an assistant professor of political science at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and I'll be your moderator. It's my pleasure today to introduce Mark Munsell, a St. Louis native who serves as the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency's Director of the Data and Digital Innovation Directorate. Formerly, he served as NGA's Chief Technology Officer and the Deputy Director of the Chief Information Officer IT Services Directorate. In all of these different roles, Mark has facilitated and continues to facilitate innovative development aimed at transforming and modernizing NGA's technology to better serve its mission partners. Additionally, oversees and streamlines IT-related capabilities and services. He's served in a variety of different roles previously in the Department of Commerce, where he was awarded the Bronze Medal for his software engineering work. And through his work with NGA, he has also earned the Presidential Rank Award and the NGA's Distinguished Civilian Medal. He is also very proudly not a member of the Flat Earth Society. Mark, thank you so much for being here. Welcome, and I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I was just mentioning to the team here that normally I guess we don't have guests from St. Louis. So it's cool to be a St. Louis native on here. And I'll also point out as well that I am broadcasting from downtown St. Louis at a place called Moonshot Labs. It's an NGA facility in the T-Rex building down on Washington Avenue. It's kind of like an incubator space where we do a lot of cool engagement with the community and across the different intelligence agencies, Department of Defense, as well as universities and local businesses. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about NGA. There's probably people on this call that don't know about our agency. I think it'd be really good to baseline everybody on what our agency does. It can be complicated. It can be confusing. And I often joke to people, it's very difficult for me to explain what I do at work. So I want to give everyone a chance to kind of get a little baseline of what we do. So Bob actually has a video we're going to play. It's about a 2.5-minute video, and it'll give a good start to explaining the agency.
As we emerge from a global pandemic, we find ourselves navigating an ever more turbulent world. With the rise of China and Russia, conflict in Ukraine, the threat of a nuclear Iran and North Korea, and human displacement caused by war and natural disasters, the importance of intelligence gathering and analysis remain as critical as ever. As the world leader in timely, relevant, accurate, and actionable geospatial intelligence, the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency maintains its steadfast watch over these events. But our ever-changing world requires more than just watchfulness. To defend against such threats, we must have resolute effort across every domain, providing a comprehensive and precise understanding of the world around us. Whether that is informing senior policymakers in the White House, military planners in the Pentagon and at the combatant commands, or our forces in the field and fleet, NGA must be agile and responsive in providing the geospatial data and insights needed to make informed decisions and act quickly in times of crisis. To maintain our geo-win supremacy, NGA is organizing and investing around 5 strategic objectives. We must be ready. we are constantly working to enhance standards and interoperability for and with allies and partners at home and abroad. A highly skilled and specialized workforce with diverse perspectives ensures that we can meet the mission where and when needed. NGA team members are embedded with partners across the globe to provide a critical understanding of all that GeoInt provides. We're streamlining and managing our resources to best serve our customers and country, which is critical to our success today and in the future. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, and computer vision continue to be a priority. The transfer of Project Maven to NGA will help us accelerate GeoInt AI capabilities, enabling more comprehensive decision advantage. Our ability to respond to an ever-shifting threat landscape will be enhanced by the new NGA St. Louis facility. We are proud to be part of the geospatial ecosystem flourishing in the St. Louis region, and will continue to improve our talent pipeline and identify new opportunities with local businesses and community members. Precise, predictive, powerful, from core to constellation, from seabed to space. The National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency is uniquely poised to navigate these turbulent times and best serve our nation. And we look forward to fostering the innovative spirit required to drive toward GeoInt supremacy for a better and safer world.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Hopefully you guys could see me. I'm back here. Yeah, good. Thanks, Stephen. Okay, so maybe still complicated, right? So maybe still not completely understand what we do as an agency. And I'm here to talk about artificial intelligence, but I want to lead us up to that to understand how we apply it and what the big ideas are and what the risks are. So hopefully you did get the sense from that video that what we do is ubiquitous, it's global, it is requires us to have sort of the eyes of the nation, right? The intent of the eyes of the nation to keep track of our adversaries, to keep track of potential risks to our country, and provide that national security sort of overwatch, if you will. It's also very difficult. And the reason that it's increasingly difficult is because there are increasing problems, right? We have situations in the world that seem to compound upon themselves. The potential of wider outbreaks of conflict and war loom. And so we have to have more sensors. You see commercial companies every month putting up more satellites. We are, as a nation, constantly putting up more sensors and have more capability to do remote sensing. And because of this, we have a deluge of data that's coming our way. And budgets and common sense don't provide for doubling or tripling or quadrupling of eyes of humans to be able to exploit this sensor data. So we have to turn to automation. And in this case, NGA specifically is investing in some core AI technology, things like computer vision. Most of you are familiar with computer vision. You use it on your smartphones. You can snap a photo of something with your smartphone, and some of the algorithms are embedded in the phone, or there are services that will automatically detect things on the image. For example, Google Photos will automatically find like people in your photos and try to tag them and organize your photos based on that. It's a good example. But you can imagine trying to apply this kind of technology from low Earth orbit. It's way different and it's way more challenging. Some of the basic tenets of AI, right, apply to both. But as you get into things like the amount of compute that's needed, right, to run it, and the speed in which you need to run it, and the amount of storage of storing the data, it's completely different. And so our challenges are trying to detect objects of interest, things that are important for us to track to keep our country safe, and to do it in a way that we might only have a handful of pixels to work with. And we might have thousands or millions of things to track, to detect. And so we're applying artificial intelligence both on the computer vision side and then on the analytics side, where once we do get these detections, we're able to put them in context. We're able to put them into spatial context and determine relationships, understand how things might react based on movement. Things like, for example, we use computer vision to keep very close track of the Russian invasion of Kyiv early in the war, in the Russian-Ukraine conflict. Obviously, we use humans to be able to make sense of what we were getting from the computer vision detections, but more and more, because we have so much data, we rely on artificial intelligence to be able to assist our humans to do this. A lot of people have wondered about the whole concept of artificial intelligence in terms of the intent, right? So you go back 50 years of computers and a lot of debate then about what computers were useful for. And there were people, sort of Luddites back then saying they didn't see much use for computers, maybe to do massive amounts of calculations that could be done better than humans. So let computers do that. And more evolution of applying compute to different business domains kind of evolved the overall utility to the point where today we're actually intentionally building this technology to be more human-like. It's very ironic, right? And when you kind of look at the early debates of computing. And so it's very difficult to test. It's very difficult to do empirical evaluations of what we have. I've had the privilege of going out to Anthropic, to Google DeepMind, to OpenAI, and talk to all these companies. And Google has 13,000 computer science PhDs. And we talked to the leadership of Google DeepMind and asked them sort of how this works or how they got to this point. And literally said, hey, they're not exactly sure. And while that might seem concerning, I think it's actually true. We're talking about different attempts at different research methods, trial and error. They stumble across things that maybe didn't initially make sense, but they worked better than others, and they weren't exactly sure why. A little bit more sort of like biology discovery or medical discoveries, where you are trying to sort of unpack why some things work better than others. And then when you sort of pile model upon model upon model and abstraction upon abstraction and nesting and orchestrating these models in a certain way, it becomes very difficult to understand. In fact, some of the 2017, 2018, when they sort of discovered transformers and really had some breakthroughs, the ways that they tested it were, let's give it the ACT and see how it does. Let's have it take the bar exam and see how it does. These are not like empirical scientific tests that we would expect when you're trying to actually do, a test of technology. But in this case, the test was, well, how smart is it compared to a human? If a human was trying to accomplish the same goal. So I think all of these things combined are what give folks pause. About a year ago, Elon Musk and some others kind of came together and say, maybe we should just kind of pause this. Maybe Sam Altman, who's from St. Louis, the CEO of OpenAI, said, hey, we should be concerned about this. Maybe there's a national concern, a governmental concern. Maybe there should be some oversight of this that we're just not paying attention to because of the potential power. And since then, we've really seen Congress take notice. We've seen new laws passed that have guidance, responsible AI, tenets on AI safety. We've seen the White House issue an executive order, really laying out what we think the government should do in terms of governing AI. Office of Management Budget has put out guidance for all the different departments. So we've seen a lot of sort of governmental oversight. I would say in some cases bureaucratic, but with the intent that this technology potentially, right, could be the most serious technology that's been invented for both good, making human lives better, and potentially disrupting our lives in bad ways through nefarious actors using the technology for various different criminal or national security means. So with that, you have to understand the sort of situation that I'm in. As a person that is researching, developing, laying out strategy for an agency like mine, safe AI to me, or responsible AI to me, is good AI. So when I'm developing artificial intelligence for our country, for our agency, the intent is for us to be equipped, to be fast, to be correct, to be precise, and provide as much information as I can to our policymakers and combatant commanders so they can be the most effective in securing our nation. So when the question came to me, should we pause? Should we take a knee? My answer is no, because for me, safe AI is good AI. On the other hand, absolutely advocating for human teaming, human machine teaming, human interaction. I will say that a lot of people, the goal is not just for AI to be more human-like, right? The goal is to replace humans in some cases. And budgeteers and money managers will push toward that goal to the end. And I will say we're in the era right now where we actually need more humans involved in this capability. We need really good humans to train the models. I think that's a big human effort to get it right in the beginning. We'll need really good humans to test and evaluate the models. In that case, we'll need scientists that really know how to understand the technology as well as how to do good empirical testing. We will need humans to man the models, to run operations, to ensure that the models are running correctly, that they are providing the output that they're supposed to provide, and or manage the orchestration of models. And then, of course, we'll need models, or we'll need humans to make sense of the model output. The whole point of having these models is to have good data, to make good decisions. So we'll need humans to take that data and apply it to situations and problems to make the best decisions possible. So with that, I'll say that overall, my work hangs in the balance. My work hangs in the balance of trying to make something good for our agency, for our country, so that we can do good and we can do it well. At the same time, guarding against this technology being used potentially in a nefarious way or by our adversaries to defeat us. And in that balance, right, means that I lay out a framework, that we lay out a framework that we can be safe, that if the technology is used to positively identify targets of interest who might be acting against us and pass that information to combatant commander, that we do it safely, we do it correct, and we do it according to the values of America, the law of armed conflict, and that we're basically doing it right. So with that, Stephen, I'll sort of pass it over to you and see if we are generating any questions or interest. This is kind of a delicate subject, but I think it's a great subject for discussion for the folks that you have online today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that overview of sort of the development as it stands and sort of where it seems to be going in the future. I'm waiting on the audience to type up their questions. I did have a couple that I hope you'll be able to answer or at least skirt around a little bit. In terms of facial recognition, right, in a criminal justice perspective, AI is notoriously faulty, particularly when it comes to correctly identifying like racial and ethnic minorities. Are there similar challenges that NGA faces when using AI to sort of analyze images, and how does the NGA confront those challenges?
Yeah, I think things like bias, right, are sort of consistently introduced especially when you have humans doing the training or humans sort of getting it started and developing these models. So it's something we always have to guard against. And so I use the term obviously test and evaluate the model, right? So you have to build tests that bake that in, make sure that we are paying attention to bias, but then manning the model as well, sort of constantly monitoring the model, monitoring the output, using other models or other humans to kind of look at it from a third party point of view or an independent point of view. Very important in terms of responsible AI. While obviously we don't do facial recognition, we are trying to recognize things that bias could also be introduced in. So if it's a certain piece of military equipment that has had that we have a certain amount of labels on, that we trained certain models on, or whatever, that model might not work in a different geographic setting, or it might not work, or it might be confused with very similar equipment that's used by our allies. And so we're always having to sort of pay attention to the potential for confusion and bias in the work that we do. And we have to take that very, very seriously.
Fantastic, thank you. You mentioned sort of more and more satellites or data gatherers being launched into orbit that were regularly trying to capture the same kind of data that NGA is trying to capture, both by other, public sovereign states, organizations, things like that, and by private enterprises. Do you view the competition to advance AI as more intense with the private sector or with other governments? Where do you see sort of the bigger threats when you're trying to meet that balance between advancing and protecting against threat?
Yeah. So I'll say I don't at all and would never consider the companies, that belong in the companies that are in the United States any sort of threat. In fact, it's our greatest asset. So whether it's a remote sensing company like Maxar, a company to look up if you're not familiar with, who provide a lot of commercial services to my agency and to other government agencies, as well as some other countries, or Amazon Web Services, having cloud compute to run these models on, or Microsoft, or any of these companies developing models for us to use and apply to this. And not a threat, absolutely 100% an asset. And our country would not be leaders, right, without these companies investing in this technology and assisting the government. So it's a really good partnership we have, and kind of baseline everyone on the goals of what we're trying to achieve. Any given administration obviously has these sort of goals in the immediacy, right? Sort of tactical goals. But all of these companies and everything we're trying to do sort of strategically, I think we're all aligned. That said, we do have there are some countries out there that are advanced, and China is very advanced in this. And so not just computer, it's maybe not as advanced in computer vision from space, but absolutely advanced in computer vision, like say on street cameras and all of the horizontal cameras, and it's a vast network of capability that they have. Pair that with the massive amounts of data centers and computing that they're building, they're really advanced in the core technology, in this case of computer vision and using artificial intelligence to extract information out of that. So I would put them number one on our pacing challenge. It's interesting to see countries like Ukraine use small UASs and use computer vision and other techniques and technology on a very tactical level to defeat their adversary today, with what with the sort of parts and equipment you can buy off of eBay or Amazon, put it all together and turn it into a tactical capability using artificial intelligence. So it's kind of the sort of two different extremes there. And I would put the US obviously is very advanced. mostly because of the great partnership that we have with the best technology companies in the world.
Fantastic. Thank you. That was a really detailed, great answer. I have a few questions.
Hey, if I'm droning on.
No.
Okay.
In the best ways. Yeah, that was great.
Okay.
Yeah. That was exactly the answer I was type of answer I was looking for. So don't hesitate. Yeah, so Bert Folman has a couple of questions here in the chat. May or may not be able to go into a lot of detail. It's public where NGA is located in DC and St. Louis with quite a bit of infrastructure in both places. What are the sort of, or are there sort of backup security plans, things like that, if you can't get into the protocols, if something does happen?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting question. I haven't gotten this one in a while. We also have major headquarters, not a major headquarters, I guess maybe I'll say a minor headquarters in Denver as well. So 3 big locations domestically, Washington, St. Louis, and Denver. But we have hundreds of locations worldwide, and we have people embedded all over the world. And we have people embedded in the commands. We have people embedded in our partner countries, in assistance with whatever sort of partnership that we have with them. And so while the major headquarters are located in those 3 places, our network is ubiquitous, global. Some of the biggest pipes capability and sort of cloud ubiquity, in the world. You can imagine how heavy our data is, and to get it around the world is super important. So I'd say our agency is very resilient. We have fall-over backup plans to make sure that we continue to conduct our operations no matter what happens.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Tariq Nabhan. Can we avoid using these developments in ways that might counter international laws, human rights, and establish policies around both domestic conflict and conflict abroad? And then I'm sure I've got a follow-up question there too.
Yeah, so this is a tough one. And this is kind of where we're in the balance, where obviously we want to have advanced technology, and we want to United States wants to employ that technology to keep us safe, the safest that we possibly can. And some of that, it's a bit like cybersecurity, right? So let me just kind of use that analogy for a second. For those of you that have been involved in defending networks, computer systems against adversaries, those adversaries are highly automated, right? Very sophisticated, use every technique they can to break into your system, steal your money, shut down your system, hold it for ransom. And the more sophisticated the computers are, the more sophisticated the defenses are, the more sophisticated the adversaries become. And so we have to, it'll be a balance between us being superior or advanced and holding our adversaries at bay while protecting the capabilities that we have so that they aren't used nefariously. At the same time, the fact is, a lot of this technology is open source. A lot of this technology can be used and applied to every business domain, not just national security, right? Every business domain. And that's good. Someone's going to come up with a great idea somewhere to use this technology to make our lives better. And I think we're all looking forward to that. We're all guarded against this technology being used to make our lives worse, which is inevitable as well.
I think in part of an earlier discussion, you talked about the need for good humans to sort of pair with AI. And so we have a cynical question from Laura Zwaran in the audience. Where do you find these good humans you spoke of needing? And how will their voices rise above the voices of the profit or power driven? doesn't seem to be a lot of precedent for good people taming the not so good in these bigger societal issues. So what are your thoughts? How do you sort of make sure that those voices are the ones that get to speak the loudest?
No, that's great. That is a great question, and I love it. I think so. I'll give you a little insight into that. We've started a program at NGA called GREAT. It stands for Genuine Responsible AI and Ethics. Right? Am I saying that right? Training. Great. So somewhere in there, those words they spell great. And it's a 2-day training program. And it mostly geared toward people that are either developing the technology or that are using the technology in a critical way. People go through this course. We talk about these things. We talk about the framework. We talk about ethical use. We talk about laws. Okay, so it's the federal government. We are constrained by laws, and people have to attest to abide by these. Actually, sign off, sort of legally sign off. They'll abide by these. It's kind of like for folks that know about security clearances. You're signing a very serious document when you do that, and so some of that is based on that model to make it sort of binary. Yes. Or no, I guess you could walk out, but yes, you will abide by these tenets. And I think that's one way to sort of get started at it. And it would be similar analogy for the people that break that vow of national security, the people that do sell us out or give secrets away, or so how do you find those people? It's a lot of vetting. It's a lot of discussion about what we're doing, why we're doing, why it's important. And it's a lot of ensuring that the country has developed and is sound. And that's why I actually appreciate Congress in this case and the White House setting these things up now. They didn't do it for social media. There's an example for you. It's social media is kind of gotten out of hand, right? Should we have passed laws about social media? A lot of people say, yeah, we probably should have regulated this early on. If so, maybe things would be different today. That's, again, it's kind of a balance. It's a two-edged sword. Obviously, we want free speech and all this kind of stuff. But some of the crazy things that have come about because of social media are out of hand in some cases. So I think it's similar to that. We don't want to overregulate. We don't want to overburden, but to set up good practices of responsible AI early is something that even the AI companies are calling for themselves.
That is a fantastic segue into our next question. Does NGA view TikTok as a threat?
So I think that the agency would subscribe to national security policy in this case. And I think our national security policy currently bans it from any kind of government device, which I don't know, that's just practical sense in some cases. And I'll probably just stop there. We're not allowed to use it, right, in official businesses, not all official devices. On the surface, it looks like a cute little fun, right, social media app, and potentially, right, under the surface, it's speaking of AI, it's everything that company could collect on the user that they possibly could collect, every piece of information, putting that into a big statistical artificial intelligence model and predict what I would do next, or predict who I am, or have a better understanding who I am, which is what a lot of social media companies do. It's what a lot of advertising companies do. It just so happens that there's this sense that maybe that data is going to people that it shouldn't. And so right now we're not allowed to use TikTok.
If I can add just a bit to that, Facebook can take and Twitter or X can take a lot of information from what you're writing, but it's not capturing all the information about the location that you're in, or the room that you're in, or all the things you have on your desk in the same way an X post versus a TikTok, 30 seconds of visual data of all of your surroundings is a lot of data, right? And in my mind, that makes TikTok potentially exponentially more dangerous than other forms of social media.
And if you've seen some of the most advanced computer vision models, you can detect a lot off of a short video. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Great. Really enjoy that discussion. So a couple questions about China, basically. It seems that when most people are talking about big competition, especially in tech, China's the name that gets brought up the most frequently. Everyone's scared of China. A question from the audience, Sanjeev Bhatia, points out that China has a long-term strategy of copying our technology rather than developing their own, and then using it however they want to, typically in a very repressive way. What kind of innovations or core technologies have we actually seen come out of China that we would maybe recognize?
Yeah. That's a tough that question would be most suited for like an analyst, intelligence community analyst that would be looking at that. I'll say that I think the general sentiment that they're copiers, maybe that's a good generality, but certainly we can't certainly we can't be that naive, right? And so a country that has been so focused on higher education, sending their folks abroad, getting the best, taking their economic windfall, right, and all of their resources, and then applying it to both their military power, but their economic power, their diplomatic power now. They have a page right out of the United States book where they're trying to help countries, assist countries in Africa, to build more, to build infrastructure. These are all things the United States has tried to do with the world to help them, to help countries come along and, of course, be our friend. It's always it's good to have friends. And I think that's one of the great things about the United States is we have great friends. I want to say that this is the perfect forum for that. If you're Iran and your friends are Russia, or China, not to say that these are bad countries, but the limited friendship set that they have is obviously it's not on par with the United States. One of the greatest things, right, are our allies, our set of allies that we have. So back to the sort of China, state of China kind of thing. I think the other concerning thing, the two other factors, is volume. They have so much capacity, so much growing capacity in every economic and defense vector, right? That's really amazing. And speed. So, you look at the rate that they've been able to build infrastructure, compute infrastructure, technology, chips. Again, it's like always maybe a little bit behind the Western world, and maybe they are copying, or maybe they're saying, hey, this looks good and let's do it. But the fact that they can do it in mass and they can do it so fast, and have been developing their population in advanced mathematics and STEM and engineering. Best case scenario here is that we're great economic partners, that we are friendly cultures, and that we will not clash over major geopolitical issues. But in some cases, their culture and their political will clashes with ours.
Great, thank you. Liana Constantine now has a question. Speaking of science across borders, can you speak about the scope of languages that are covered by NGA? And do you believe that countries that are sort of multilingual by nature have an operational advantage when it comes to developing AI tools or other tools?
I think So languages are very important, obviously very important to NGA. I'm talking about like exploiting imagery with computer vision models, but NGA does so much more than just that. We try to understand everything in context. And so that means geographic context, it means cultural context, religious, and so linguistic sort of context is very important to understanding geopolitical issues and intelligence problems. So the languages that we value and like our analysts to have are basically right now focused on mostly our areas of interest that we want to keep track of the most, but it's not limited. We kind of cover the whole world, but we probably have more people that are interested in Eastern European, Russian, and Middle Eastern languages of origin, but we still have plenty of Spanish. We're just sort of a little bit less concerned. So all of those very important in terms of languages. As far as AI goes, that's interesting. And I know that the big American companies, when they build the very large frontier models, right, the models that spend hundreds of millions of dollars, $1 billion to build, they're using the corpus of the internet. And so much of the corpus of the internet is in English, right? Percentage-wise, it's in English, but it doesn't mean that these large language models would not use or be capable of ingesting and training on the other languages. I think, don't quote me on this because I don't work for OpenAI, but I think they also have interfaces that are doing translation sort of on the fly. And that even though the large language model, the massive amounts of training data might have been English, when a user uses it, it's obviously they can use it in any language.
Great. Again, very informative and interesting answer. I've got another question while we maybe wait on the audience to come up with a couple more. I wonder a little bit about the role of misinformation and disinformation and how we can avoid, I think of like the large language processing models with basically getting less accurate over time with AI. And I wonder about the capacity for visual images to cause the same sorts of problems. And I think back through history, in a story you might be familiar with, during basically, I think World War II, the Soviets were trying to bomb Helsinki in Finland more generally. And the Finns had a tactic during the night of basically only turning on lights in part of the city and evacuating citizens from that area, and then lighting some fires outside of the city to trick the bombers. So there's sort of a long history of even, visual things trying to misinform or disinform, in that case for good, but it could also be used for ill. What are the best ways that NGA can counter the strategic use of misinformation and disinformation in terms of the visual AI?
Yeah, it's a great question. Sometimes we use the term denial and deception. So for many, right? So everyone's sort of in the game of trying to figure out and track when the sensors are over. And even then, they might scatter and hide or not come out in the open. Or disguise themselves, camouflage themselves, put themselves into situations where it's obscure what they see. And so in that case, it's super important when we build the models to do the best that we can to fill all those gaps. Or they're all the potential ways that someone might try to deceive us or deny us capability to see them. So think about that. It goes on and on and on. And how much of an investment does a country have to make to do that? Right? Stories about, building sort of cloth aircraft, right, to decoys. It might cost $5,000 and $10,000 to build a decoy. You're going to build a bunch of them, put them out on the airfield, and all the logistics takes to do that. In some cases, that might be great because someone's going to spend $5 million bombing that airfield, right? Kind of like your example. And then it gets into this whole idea of what will we do to defend against this sort of standard AI that's out there. And people have already done it. People have tried to come up with methods to obscure facial recognition by painting shapes or boxes or things on their face to suddenly the computer's like, that's not a face. And and it doesn't even recognize it. So you can imagine that adversaries will start doing weird stuff to especially big equipment that's going to be out in the open. Our director likes to joke that people will be adding like appendages to things, like fake, like run lightweight aluminum tubes with like flags on them or something. All this different stuff that one might do to try to deceive or deny a computer vision model from detecting it. So it's like I said, the cybersecurity analogy I think is similar. It's the same thing. People immediately, as soon as you get the next version of Microsoft Defender or Norton antivirus, whatever, the hackers are immediately like, oh yeah, okay, I see what they're trying to use to defend this now. How are we going to work around it? I kind of wish we didn't have to do it, or we weren't sort of on this path of cat and mouse, but this is what actually keeps the world sort of moving forward in both developing new technology as well as, again, defending against the nefarious use.
Yeah. Cat and mouse was the exact analogy that came to mind too, right? It's just a constant who gets to be a step ahead, a step ahead, a step ahead, but you're never really getting more than a step ahead most of the time. And
again, the hope is that, at least from protecting the country, that we stay ahead. That's the right thing to do. And or the cat and mouse produces economic and technological breakthroughs that are good for humankind.
Absolutely. Well said. Sort of related to the across borders theme and talking about denial and deception, if I can throw it back a year or two to some relatively current events, what can you tell us about the balloons and what was going on there?
Yeah. So I think that people launch balloons and that it's probably more common than anyone sort of thinks and realizes. And, obviously we've had weather balloons, and it goes back to, there's a cool story about World War II where Japan was launching balloons. Do you know the story?
I'm not familiar with the story.
It's a great story to look up in Google. I'm not going to do it justice, but during World War II, Japan was launching balloons from Japan laden with booby traps and explosives, and they easily crossed the Pacific and landed in the United States. And in some cases, killed and injured farmers' children that were curious about what had just landed in their field, and it was a Japanese balloon bomb. I don't know sure what the name
Sure.
of it is.
Yeah.
So this is not new practice, but it's also rare and unique. And we're coming up with new methods to either be able to detect the balloons or track the balloons or monitor them kind of worldwide.
Great. Thank you for that. I'm definitely going to go back and look up that story.
I think there's a great NPR podcast on it.
Yeah. I will definitely look that up. We don't have any more questions from the audience, so I'll start wrapping up now. Mark, thank you so much for your time. Any final words, thoughts, big picture takeaways that we should walk away with, things like that?
Yeah, I will say I'm very hopeful. Certainly don't sleep on this technology. I mean, I know it's a lot of hype. I know it's like in the news all the time. Everyone having these panels and discussions about artificial intelligence. The breakthroughs that have happened since like 2017, 2018 have been pretty phenomenal. And when I was joking earlier, like, hey, we'll test it by giving it the SAT or the bar exam. Think about that you're to the point now where not only can it win these chess matches or Go matches, it can also understand law, accounting, sciences, the things that and understand it in a human way. So what we're going to see over the next few years, big companies like Google and Microsoft and Amazon are going to have these models really begin to use tools that a human would use. or a data scientist would use, right? They're going to tap into APIs, they're going to tap into databases, they're going to do sophisticated queries and functions and get result sets back and do something with that result set. And when you can ask some of these models basic questions, and then we'll go off and do sophisticated things to come back with the answer. That's where we're going to see the real power of these models sort of take flight. And that's where it's also going to get fuzzy and abstraction upon abstraction, layer upon a layer, and it's going to get difficult to peel it all back. So while it has great promise, and I think that 10 years from now, we will be interfacing with computers in a completely different way. We'll still have mice and keyboard, I'm sure, but there's going to be a lot more sort of verbal or other kinds of interaction with a computer. And it will be hopefully, right, good for us as a world, and we guard against inventing technology that will be harmful to us.
Absolutely. Mark, thank you so much for that optimistic final note there. Thank you for your time, your presentation, and your fantastic engagement with the Q&A. As a reminder, everyone, this was co-produced by the World Affairs Council of St. Louis and Munsell Global. The World Affairs Council relies on donations and memberships to continue to put on these sorts of events. And it's their 75th anniversary, so give them something else to celebrate and become a member today. Mark, thank you so much again for being here. We very much appreciate your time and your expertise.
Thank you, Stephen, and thanks to everyone.